Velthar stood in the observation deck of the Coalition command station and looked out at the stars. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he reviewed the assignment on his datapad. Military observer. Combat documentation specialist. His job was to watch humans fight and write reports about what he saw. He did not understand why this assignment existed. The Vrelnari Empire had been part of the Galactic Coalition for 300 cycles. They had fought in 20 major wars. They knew combat. They knew warriors. The Kethrani were born with armor plating. The Drovik had acid blood. The Rental could survive in vacuum for short periods. These were real advantages in battle. Humans had nothing special. Velthar had studied the files. Humans came from a planet called Earth. They had no natural weapons, no claws, no venom, no thick skin. They were average in strength compared to most Coalition species. They could not see in the dark as well as Vrelnari. They could not hear high frequencies like the Silmari. They were, by all biological measures, unremarkable. Yet every species that fought alongside them spoke about humans with strange voices. Some sounded afraid, some sounded amazed. No one sounded normal when they talked about human soldiers. This made no sense to Velthar. The door to the observation deck opened with a soft hiss. A human walked in. He was tall for his species, with dark hair cut very short. He wore the standard Coalition military uniform, with several medals on his chest. His face had small scars, the kind that came from real fighting. "Observer Velthar?" the human asked. His voice was calm and steady. "Yes," Velthar said. "You are Commander Quan Taemin?" "That's right." The human extended his hand. Velthar knew this gesture. He reached out with his primary manipulator and shook the human's hand. The grip was firm but not aggressive. "Welcome to our division. I hope you're ready for an interesting deployment." "I am here to observe and document," Velthar said. "Nothing more." Quan smiled. It was a strange expression, showing teeth. Velthar knew humans did this to show they were friendly, but it always looked like a threat display to him. "You'll do more than observe, friend. You'll understand. Come on, let me introduce you to the team." Velthar followed Quan through the corridors of the station. Human soldiers passed them, and each one nodded or saluted Quan. They seemed relaxed. Too relaxed. Velthar had seen Vrelnari soldiers before deployment. They were quiet, focused, preparing their minds for violence. These humans laughed and talked like they were going to a social gathering. They entered a briefing room. 4 humans turned to look at Velthar. "Everyone, this is Observer Velthar from the Vrelnari Empire," Quan said. "He'll be shadowing us for the next operation. Velthar, meet my command team." A woman with sharp eyes and quick movements stepped forward. "Lieutenant Haiwan, Tactical Operations." She nodded once. Her uniform was perfect, every detail in place. A broader human with muscular arms raised his hand in a casual wave. "Sergeant Dong Hyun, I run the ground teams." His voice was deep and friendly. A smaller woman with kind eyes smiled at Velthar. "Corporal Nari, I'm the head medic." She had medical insignia on her shoulders and carried a large pack. The last human looked young, almost too young. His eyes were bright, but nervous. "Private Young Su, sir. I mean observer. He stopped talking, his face turning slightly red. The other humans laughed. Not cruel laughter, but warm, like a family. "Young Su just finished academy training," Quan explained. "This will be his first real deployment. Don't worry, kid. You'll do fine." Velthar sat down and activated his recording equipment. "Tell me about tomorrow's mission," he said. Haiwan brought up a holographic display. It showed a planet covered in purple vegetation. "This is Krev 9. The Zalvith swarm has established a stronghold here. They're using it to launch raids on Coalition supply lines." "The Zalvith," Velthar said slowly. He knew about them. Hive mind species. Overwhelming numbers, pain weapons. They are very dangerous. They are, Quan agreed, which is why we're going in with a full division. Coalition forces from 6 species. We'll establish a landing zone at dawn, then push toward their primary nest. The Zalvith use pain emitters, Velthar said. These weapons cause extreme neural suffering. Most species cannot function when exposed. Most species, Dong-hyun said with a strange smile. Velthar looked at him. You believe humans are different? We don't believe, Nari said quietly. We know. This made no sense to Velthar. Pain was pain. The nervous system either functioned or it did not. There was no species that could simply ignore neurological assault. It was not biologically possible. You seem doubtful, Quan observed. I am, Velthar admitted. I have read reports. They say humans can fight through pain that stops other species. This seems like exaggeration. It's not, Haiwan said. She pulled up her sleeve and showed a scar that ran from her wrist to her elbow. Zalvith Claw last deployment, went down to the bone. I was in a pain emitter field at the time. I still completed my mission objectives. Velthar stared at the scar. How? Because my team needed me to, she said simply, as if this explained everything. Young-Soo raised his hand slightly. Sir, can I ask the observer a question? Go ahead, Quan said. The young human looked at Velthar with curious eyes. Why do other species think we're scary? We're just people doing our jobs. Velthar did not know how to answer. He had asked himself the same question. That's what he's here to find out, Dong-hyun said, clapping Young-Soo on the shoulder. The young human nearly fell over from the friendly impact. Quan stood up. We deploy at 0600 station time. That's 7 hours from now. Get some rest, everyone. Velthar, you'll ride in the command shuttle with me and Haiwan. You'll have a clear view of the operation. And safety protocols? Velthar asked. You'll have full protective gear and stay at least 2 kilometers from active combat, Quan said. We're not here to get observers killed. The team filed out of the briefing room. Nari stopped and looked back at Velthar. Observer, can I give you some advice? Yes, Velthar said. Keep an open mind tomorrow. What you think you know about combat, about limits, about what's possible, humans change those rules. She smiled, the same friendly expression. See you at dawn. Velthar was left alone in the briefing room. He reviewed his recordings of the conversation. The humans had been confident, but not arrogant, friendly, but professional. They joked with each other, but clearly respected their commander. They acted like any good military unit. So why did every other species fear them? Velthar made a note in his report log. Pre-deployment observation. Human soldiers display standard cohesion and morale. No obvious indicators of exceptional combat capability. Awaiting field observation to understand reported phenomena. He attached the files and sent them to Coalition Command. Then he went to his assigned quarters to rest before the deployment. As he lay in his sleeping pod, Velthar thought about what Quan had said. You'll understand us better after tomorrow's drop. He would see. He would observe. He would document the truth about human warriors, whatever that truth turned out to be. The drop pods fell through the purple sky of Krev 9 like metal rain. Velthar watched from the command shuttle as hundreds of Coalition soldiers descended toward the landing zone. His recording equipment captured everything in perfect detail. The planet below was beautiful in a hostile way. Purple trees with black leaves covered the landscape. Rivers of something that was not quite water ran between rocky hills. The air readings showed it was breathable for most species, but just barely. Everything about this world felt wrong to Velthar's senses. Landing zone is hot, Haiwan reported from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls. Zalvith forces detected. Estimated 3,000 hostiles within 5 kilometers. Quan stood behind her, watching the tactical display with calm eyes. Standard deployment. All units establish defensive perimeter. Artillery teams, find your positions. Velthar recorded everything. The humans worked with efficient speed. No panic, no hesitation, just professional soldiers doing their jobs. The shuttle landed 2 kilometers from the front line, exactly as promised. Velthar could see the battle through the observation windows. Coalition forces from multiple species dug into positions. Weapons fired, energy shields activated. It looked like every other military operation Velthar had observed in his long career. Then everything changed. A sound filled the air. It was not quite a sound. It was a feeling that became noise. Velthar's entire nervous system suddenly screamed in protest. Every nerve in his body felt like it was on fire. He collapsed to the floor of the shuttle, all 4 of his limbs unable to support his weight. Pain. Pure pain. Nothing else existed. Through his agony, Velthar heard Haywan's voice. Pain emitters are active. Zalvith have deployed at least 6 devices. How was she talking? How was she not screaming? Velthar forced his eyes open. Haywan was still at her station. Her hands shook. Sweat ran down her face. Her jaw was clenched so tight that Velthar could see the muscles standing out. But she was still working. Commander, she said through gritted teeth. Emitters are concentrated on sectors 3 and 5. Coalition forces, unable to advance. Quan picked up his communication device. His voice was steady, as if he was not experiencing the same neural assault that was destroying Velthar. All human units, advance through the pain field. I repeat, advance and eliminate those emitters. Sir, yes, sir, came the responses. Velthar could hear strain in the voices, but they were responding. They were following orders. This was impossible. The shuttle's medical systems activated automatically, injecting Velthar with pain suppressors. The agony faded to a manageable level. He pulled himself up and looked at the external cameras. What he saw would stay in his memory forever. Human soldiers were advancing through the pain emitter field. Velthar could see their suffering. Some vomited inside their helmets. Others moved with jerky, spasming steps. One soldier's nose was bleeding freely. Another was crying, tears running down his face. But they did not stop. Dong Hyun's voice came over the radio. Hammer Squad, on me! We're taking out Emitter 1! Move! 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 Velthar switched the camera view to Dong Hyun's position. The sergeant was leading 5 soldiers directly toward a Zalvith pain emitter. The device looked like a twisted pillar of organic machinery, pulsing with each wave of agony it sent out. The Zalvith defenders, protected from their own weapon, fired at the advancing humans. Energy bolts and razor-sharp projectiles filled the air. One human went down, then another, but the rest kept coming. Dong Hyun threw something. It flew through the air and attached to the pain emitter. 3 seconds later, the device exploded. The pain from that sector stopped immediately. Velthar watched in amazement as Dong Hyun helped up the fallen soldier. The man's leg was badly injured, but he was alive. Nari, need a medic at emitter 1, Dong Hyun called. On my way, came the response. Velthar found Nari's position on the camera. The medic was running through the pain field, her medical pack bouncing on her back. She was crying. He could see tears streaming down her face. Her hands were shaking so badly that she could barely hold her medical scanner. But she was running toward the wounded, not away from danger. She reached the injured soldier and immediately began treatment. Her hands moved with practiced skill despite the trembling. She stabilized the wound, injected medicine, and had the soldier ready for evacuation in less than 3 minutes. All while standing in a pain field that had incapacitated every non-human soldier. Emitter 2 is down, came another report. Emitter 3 destroyed, said a different voice. Velthar looked at the tactical display. One by one, the pain emitters were being eliminated. Only human soldiers were doing it. Every other coalition species was unable to function in those fields. Vrelnari warriors, who prided themselves on their endurance, were lying on the ground in fetal positions. The Ketharani were unconscious. The Drovik had simply shut down, their multiple brains unable to process the conflicting pain signals. Only humans kept fighting. Youngsu appeared on one of Velthar's camera feeds. The young private was with a group of human soldiers advancing on Emitter 4. His face was pale. Velthar could see him shaking, but he was still moving forward, his weapon ready. A Zalvith warrior burst from cover and attacked the squad. It was a terrifying creature, all claws and chitinous plates. It slashed at Youngsu. The young human dodged, barely. The claw caught his shoulder, tearing through his armor. Blood sprayed. Youngsu screamed, but he also fired his weapon. The Zalvith fell. Youngsu kept fighting. He pressed his hand against the wound on his shoulder and kept advancing with his squad. Velthar saw him inject himself with something from his emergency medical kit. The bleeding slowed. "Target is down," Youngsu reported. His voice was high and strained, but he was reporting properly, following protocol, doing his job while bleeding from a serious wound. "Good work, Private," Quan said. "Nari, Youngsu needs attention after the emitter is down." "Understood," Nari responded. The fourth emitter exploded, then the fifth. When the sixth and final pain emitter was destroyed, the battlefield changed. Coalition soldiers from other species began to recover. They stood up, shaking off the effects of the neural assault. They rejoined the fight. But the humans had already broken the Zalvith defense. Velthar watched as Donghyun's squads pushed forward into the enemy position. The Zalvith, confused and frightened, began to retreat. They had never encountered an enemy that could fight through their pain weapons. They did not know what to do. "All units, establish forward positions," Quan ordered. "Secure the area. Medics, begin triage on all wounded, coalition and enemy." Hei-Wan finally relaxed slightly in her chair. The sweat on her face was drying. "Casualties?" she asked. 2 human KIA, 7 wounded, came the report. 13 other coalition species injured by pain emitters, but they'll recover. No other fatalities. Quan closed his eyes for a brief moment. When he opened them, Velthar saw sadness there. "Mark the fallen. Full honors when we return to base." Velthar looked at the commander. "You lost soldiers," he said quietly. "We did," Quan confirmed. "That's the cost of war. But because our people could advance through that pain field, we saved hundreds of lives from other species. Our allies are safe. That matters." Nari's voice came over the radio. "Commander, Youngsu is stable. The wound isn't as bad as it looked. He'll be fine." "Tell him he did good work today," Quan said. Velthar reviewed his recordings. He watched the footage again and again. Humans fighting through pain that stopped every other species. Humans continuing their mission while suffering. Humans helping their fallen while barely able to stand themselves. "How?" Velthar asked. "How is this possible? The pain should have stopped your neural functions. It should have made you unable to move." Hei-Wan turned in her chair to look at him. Her face was tired, but her eyes were steady. "We feel pain just like you do, Observer. It hurts us. It hurts us badly. But humans learned a long time ago that pain is just information. It tells us we're damaged. It doesn't tell us to stop." "That makes no logical sense," Velthar said. "No," Quan agreed. "It doesn't. But that's what makes us human. We decide what stops us. Not our bodies, not pain, not fear. We decide." Velthar made new notes in his report. His hands were still shaking from the pain suppressors wearing off. He wrote, "Human soldiers demonstrate ability to function through neurological assault that incapacitates all other known species. This is not due to superior pain tolerance, but rather superior pain management and mental discipline. Requires further observation to fully understand." Outside the shuttle, human soldiers were helping wounded coalition members. They shared their medical supplies. They offered comfort. The same humans who had just fought through impossible pain were now being gentle and kind. Velthar did not understand humans, but he was beginning to fear them. 3 days had passed since the landing on Krev 9. Velthar had not slept well. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw human soldiers walking through pain that should have killed them. The Coalition Command Center was busy with activity. Officers from 6 different species monitored the battle progress. The news was not good. Zalvith forces are regrouping faster than expected, a Kethrani general announced. They have reinforcements coming from their northern hives. Our estimates show they'll outnumber us 3-1 within 2 days. Recommend full retreat, a Vrelnari admiral said. We've taken the landing zone. We've disrupted their operations. That's a tactical victory. Let's not lose it by pushing too far. Velthar watched as the other commanders nodded in agreement. It was the logical choice, the smart choice. They had accomplished their basic mission. Staying longer would only cost more lives. Commander Quan, what is the status of your forces? The Kethrani general asked. Quan stood at his station, studying the tactical maps. Haiwan was beside him, running calculations on her datapad. They had been awake for 72 hours straight. Velthar could see the exhaustion on their faces. My forces are combat effective, Quan said. We can continue operations. Commander, we're ordering a retreat, the admiral said. Begin withdrawal procedures. Request permission to continue the advance, Quan said calmly. The command center went quiet. Every officer turned to look at the human commander. Did you not hear the casualty projections? The general asked. The Zalvith will overwhelm us if we stay. I heard them, Quan said. But I've also analyzed their defensive patterns. They're strong on the outside, but their center is weak. They're spreading their forces to make themselves look bigger than they are. It's a bluff. Haiwan brought up new tactical data. Our deep reconnaissance shows the central hive has minimal defenses. They pulled most warriors to the perimeter when we landed. If we strike now, while they're repositioned, we can end this operation in 48 hours instead of retreating and having to come back later. That's a massive risk, the admiral said. War is risk, Quan replied, but I believe in my people. Give us 2 days. If we can't crack their center, we'll withdraw. You have my word. The coalition commanders looked at each other. Velthar could see they wanted to refuse. It was too dangerous, too uncertain. But they had seen what humans could do. 48 hours, the general finally said. Not 1 minute longer. If you're not at the evacuation point by then, we leave without you. Understood, Quan said. Thank you. The communication ended. Quan immediately turned to his team. Dong Hyun, get the squads ready. Light equipment only. We're going fast and quiet. On it, the sergeant responded. Velthar followed the human forces as they prepared for the deep push. He noticed something strange. The humans were not resting. They should have been sleeping before such a dangerous mission. Instead, they were checking equipment, sharing supplies, and making quiet jokes with each other. Do you not need sleep? Velthar asked Nari as she organized medical supplies. The medic smiled tiredly. We need it. We're just not getting it right now. We'll sleep when the job is done. That is not healthy, Velthar said. No, Nari agreed. It's not. But humans are very good at being unhealthy for short periods when we need to be. We push hard, we accomplish the mission, then we recover. It's how we work. She handed him a stimulant pack. Here, you'll need this if you're coming with us. We're moving fast. Velthar looked at the chemical stimulant. His species used similar things, but only in extreme emergencies. Overuse could damage the nervous system. How often do you use these? He asked. This will be my 3rd in 3 days, Nari said casually. Velthar was horrified. That could cause permanent damage. Could, Nari said. Probably won't. And right now, the mission matters more than probably. Don't worry, Observer. I know my limits. All medics do. But Velthar was learning that human limits were not where other species' limits were. The advance began at midnight, station time. Velthar rode in an armored transport with Quan and Haywan. Around them, human soldiers moved through the purple forest like ghosts. They used night vision equipment, but they also simply adapted to the darkness faster than Velthar thought possible. Young-Soo was with Dong-Hyun's squad. The young private's shoulder was bandaged from his earlier wound, but he was back in action. He moved carefully, learning from the more experienced soldiers around him. The first enemy contact came at hour 4. Zalvith scouts attacked from the trees. The humans responded instantly. No hesitation, no panic. They simply fought. Velthar watched as Dong-Hyun's squad eliminated the threat in under 30 seconds. Clean, efficient, brutal. "Contacts down," Dong-Hyun reported. "Continuing advance." At hour 12, they encountered something new. The Zalvith had deployed acid spores in the air. Velthar's sensors detected them immediately. The spores would eat through standard armor in minutes. They needed to retreat and find a safe route. The humans did not retreat. Haywan collected samples of the spores in a container. She ran quick analysis on her portable equipment. "The acid is based on a sulfuric compound. We need a neutralizing base." Nari was already searching through her medical supplies. "I have alkaline solution for treating acid burns. Not enough to protect everyone, though." "What about the rocks?" Young-Soo asked suddenly. Everyone looked at the young private. He pointed at the purple stone outcroppings around them. "In Academy, they taught us that purple minerals on oxygen-rich worlds usually have high calcium content. Calcium carbonate neutralizes acid." Haywan stared at him for a moment, then quickly analyzed a rock sample. Her face broke into a genuine smile. "He's right. The kid is right. These rocks are perfect." Within 20 minutes, the humans had ground the rocks into powder and mixed it with water to create a protective paste. They coated their armor with it. The acid spores hit the coating and neutralized harmlessly. Velthar watched in amazement. They had encountered an unexpected obstacle and solved it in less than 30 minutes using local materials and creative thinking. "Smart kid," Dong-Hyun said, patting Young-Soo on his good shoulder. The young private beamed with pride. The advance continued. At hour 24, Velthar noticed the singing. It started with one voice. Dong-Hyun singing something in Korean. The words were old, from Earth. Velthar's translator identified it as a traditional military song, hundreds of years old. Then other voices joined. Human soldiers across the entire formation began singing, some in Korean, some in other Earth languages. Different songs, but all with the same purpose. "Why are they singing?" Velthar asked Quan. The commander was quiet for a moment. "It helps. When you're tired, when you're scared, when everything hurts, singing reminds you that you're not alone, that others are going through the same thing. It's an old human tradition. Music makes hard things easier to bear." The songs continued for hours. They changed as the march went on. Some were sad, some were angry, some were defiant, but they never stopped. At hour 36, they hit serious resistance. A Zalvith defensive line with heavy weapons. The battle was fierce. Humans fell. Velthar watched Nari run from wounded soldier to wounded soldier, her hands steady despite days without real rest. She saved 3 lives in 5 minutes. Her movements were practiced and sure. She had done this before, many times. One of the wounded was Young-Soo again. A piece of shrapnel had hit his leg. He was lying on the ground, bleeding and crying. Nari knelt beside him. "It hurts," Young-Soo sobbed. "I know," Nari said gently. She worked quickly, removing the shrapnel and sealing the wound. "But pain means you're alive, and alive means you get to go home. Hold on, Young-Soo. Hold on for me." "I'm trying," the young private whispered. "I know you are. You're doing great. So brave. Her voice was soft and kind, even as her hands did brutal work. She injected him with pain medicine and clotting agents. Young Su would live. At hour 45, they reached the central hive. Quan had been right. It was barely defended. The Zalvith had pulled almost all their warriors to the perimeter. The human forces struck hard and fast. They planted explosive charges on the main structure. They set up defensive positions. They accomplished in 3 hours what should have taken 3 days. At hour 48 exactly, Quan gave the order to withdraw. The humans moved back toward the evacuation point. They carried their wounded. They helped each other when someone stumbled from exhaustion. They sang again, quieter now, tired but unbroken. Behind them, the central hive exploded. The Zalvith command structure was destroyed. Coalition command was waiting at the evacuation point with shocked expressions. They had expected to recover bodies. Instead, they got a victory. Velthar watched as human soldiers finally allowed themselves to collapse. They had pushed themselves past every reasonable limit. Now that the mission was complete, their bodies demanded rest. Young Su sat with his back against a transport, his leg properly bandaged now. He was eating a ration pack and talking quietly with other soldiers. Dong Hyun was already asleep, sitting upright with his weapon across his lap. Nari was still working, checking on the wounded from other species. She would not rest until everyone was cared for. Quan stood with Haiwan, both of them somehow still awake, making sure every single human soldier made it to the evacuation point. Velthar reviewed his recordings. Humans fighting through exhaustion, humans solving impossible problems. Humans caring for each other even when they could barely stand. He made a new note in his report. Humans do not fight because they are strong. They fight because they choose to fight. And nothing I have observed can stop a human who has made a choice. The evacuation ships arrived. The mission was over. But Velthar's understanding of humans was just beginning. Hour 47 of the operation, 1 hour before the evacuation deadline. Velthar thought the mission was finished. The central hive was destroyed. The humans were withdrawing. Everything was going according to plan. Then the Zalvith deployed their final weapon. Velthar first noticed something was wrong when the human soldiers stopped moving. They did not fall down. They did not cry out in pain. They simply stopped, frozen in place like statues. "What's happening?" Velthar asked Quan. The commander's face had gone pale. His hands gripped the edge of the command console so hard that his knuckles turned white. "Bioweapon! They're attacking our adrenal systems." Hei-Wan was struggling to speak. "It's like drowning. Can't breathe right. Can't think." Velthar understood. The Zalvith had created a weapon that attacked the fight-or-flight response itself. Without adrenaline, the body could not react to danger. Soldiers would stand frozen, unable to defend themselves or run away. It was a perfect weapon. It should have ended the battle immediately. But something else happened instead. The first human to move was Dong Hyun. He took one step forward, then another. His movements were strange, jerky. His eyes were very wide. His breathing was rapid and harsh. "Squads, report," he managed to say. Slowly, other human soldiers began to move. They looked wrong. Their movements were too fast. Their faces showed too much emotion. Some were shaking. Others had strange smiles. Their eyes were bright and intense. Velthar checked his medical scanners and felt terror run through him. The human bodies were not shutting down from the bioweapon. They were doing the opposite. Their adrenal systems were going into overdrive. Adrenaline, cortisol, endorphins, and other chemicals were flooding their bloodstreams at levels that should have been fatal. "They're killing themselves," Velthar said in horror. "Their own bodies are poisoning them." "No," Quan said. His voice was strange now, higher pitched. "We're fighting back. Our bodies are fighting the weapon. We can't control it perfectly." Nari's voice came over the radio. She sounded manic, speaking too fast. "All medics, be ready for stimulant crash after combat. Repeat, prepare for mass stimulant crash. This is going to be bad." Young Su appeared on Velthar's camera feed. The young private who had been so nervous just days ago now moved with frightening speed. His wounded leg did not seem to slow him at all. His face showed no pain, only intense focus. The Zalvith warriors, thinking the humans were disabled, had moved in to finish them. It was a fatal mistake. What happened next would be called the Hour of Terror in Zalvith historical records. The human soldiers did not fight like they had before. They fought like something from a nightmare. They were too fast, too aggressive, too relentless. Donghyun's squad encountered a group of 12 Zalvith warriors. Normally, this would have required careful tactics and coordination. Instead, the humans simply charged. They fought with their weapons until the weapons were empty, then with knives, then with their bare hands. Velthar watched one human soldier take a Zalvith claw strike that should have been fatal. The soldier looked at the wound, looked at the enemy, and kept fighting. The pain did not register. The injury did not slow him down. His body had shut off everything except the need to fight. Young Su moved through the battlefield like he had been doing this for years instead of days. His training took over, enhanced by the chemical storm in his blood. He was still the same scared young man inside, but his body was operating on pure combat instinct. "Is this normal?" Velthar asked. "No," Quan admitted. "This is what happens when you push humans past their breaking point. We don't break the way other species break. We break forward." Hai Wan was coordinating artillery strikes while experiencing the same chemical overload as every other human. Her hands were shaking badly, but she still hit every target. Her mind was working too fast, processing information at speeds that were burning through her mental energy like fire. "Target coordinates locked. Fire mission complete. Next target acquired," she said in rapid speech. The Zalvith began to retreat. For the first time in their species' history, they felt something they had never experienced before: fear. The hive mind was designed to be fearless. Individual deaths meant nothing. The collective continued. But the collective had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that became more dangerous when it should have been defeated. An enemy that fought harder when injured. An enemy that simply refused to stop. The Zalvith warriors fell back toward their secondary hive. The human soldiers pursued. They should not have had the energy for a pursuit. They had been fighting for nearly 2 days straight. They should have been physically and mentally exhausted. But they kept going. Velthar followed in the command transport, his recording equipment capturing everything. He was documenting something that would change how every species in the galaxy viewed humans. He was documenting why humans were feared. Nari was treating wounded while experiencing the same adrenaline storm as everyone else. Her hands moved with incredible speed. But they were also precise. Her medical training was so deeply ingrained that she could work correctly even while her conscious mind was barely in control. She saved 4 lives in the time it would normally take to save one. "Human medic," a Zalvith warrior called out. It was wounded, lying on the ground. The translator was working, but the Zalvith voice sounded strange, confused. Nari immediately moved to help it. Even in her enhanced state, even after days of being attacked by this species, her medical oath came first. She treated the wounded Zalvith with the same care she showed human soldiers. "Why?" the Zalvith asked. "Why help enemy?" "Because you're hurt," Nari said simply. "That's enough reason." The Zalvith had no response to that. The pursuit reached the secondary hive. This was the moment the Zalvith hive mind made its decision. It had watched the humans fight. It had seen them endure pain, exhaustion, injury. It had seen them become more dangerous, not less, when subjected to weapons designed to disable them. The hive mind had been alive for 3,000 years. It had fought hundreds of wars. It had never retreated from an enemy, until now. A communication signal came through on coalition frequencies. Velthar translated it. The Zalvith swarm requests immediate ceasefire. We surrender our claim to this world. We will withdraw. Please stop advancing. The hive mind was afraid. Quan received the message. He stood still for a long moment, his enhanced body still ready to fight, but his mind reasserting control. All human forces, halt advance, he ordered. Ceasefire is in effect. Repeat, ceasefire. Medical teams, begin triage of all wounded, including enemy combatants. The human soldiers stopped. It was not immediate. Their bodies were still flooded with combat chemicals. But discipline and training overcame biology. They stopped fighting because their commander ordered it. The change was immediate. Human soldiers who had been terrifying warriors just moments ago began helping wounded Zalvith. They shared medical supplies. They offered water and basic aid. Young Su sat down heavily, his hands shaking. The adrenaline was starting to wear off. He looked at his wounded leg, really looked at it, and made a small sound of pain. During the fight, he had not felt it. Now he felt everything. Dong-hyun was checking on his squad. 3 wounded, none critical. He was talking to them calmly, reassuring them. His voice was gentle now, all the aggression gone. Haewon had collapsed at her station. She was still conscious, but barely. The mental strain of operating at enhanced speed for so long had exhausted her completely. Nari was already moving to help her. Quan activated the Coalition command channel. This is Commander Quan. Mission complete. Zalvith forces have surrendered, requesting immediate medical support for human forces. We have multiple soldiers entering adrenaline crash. Get medics here now. Over the next hour, Velthar watched as human soldiers began to shut down. Their bodies had pushed beyond all reasonable limits. Now the bill was coming due. Some soldiers were unconscious. Others were in shock. Many were experiencing severe tremors as their nervous systems tried to rebalance. Nari and the other medics worked desperately to stabilize everyone. Young Su was crying, not from pain, but from the overwhelming emotional release. The fear he had suppressed, the exhaustion he had ignored, the trauma he had endured, it all came flooding back. An older soldier sat with him, just holding the young private's hand. You did good, kid. You did real good. It's okay to cry. We all do after something like this. Velthar approached Quan. The commander was sitting on the ground, his head in his hands. He looked up as Velthar approached. Now you've seen it, Quan said quietly. Now you understand why other species fear us. I do not understand, Velthar admitted. You won. The enemy surrendered. Why do you all look so broken? Because that's what happens when humans fight like that, Quan explained. We can push our bodies beyond their limits. We can ignore pain, exhaustion, injury. We can become living weapons, but there's always a cost. We pay for it after. And it hurts. Then why do it? Velthar asked. Quan looked at his soldiers. Young Su being comforted. Dong-hyun checking on his people. Nari still working despite being barely able to stand. Haewon unconscious but stable. Because they're worth it, Quan said. Because our allies are worth it. Because the mission matters. Humans will break ourselves to protect what we care about. That's not a strength. It's just who we are. Velthar understood then. Humans were not fearsome because they were strong. They were fearsome because they loved, and they would destroy themselves protecting what they loved. That was the real reason other species feared humans. Not their endurance, not their pain tolerance, not their adaptability. It was their absolute refusal to abandon what they cared about, no matter the cost to themselves. That was what made humans terrifying. 2 weeks after the battle on Krev 9, Velthar sat in his private office at Coalition Command. The lights were dim. His 4 eyes ached from reviewing footage. He had watched the recordings hundreds of times. On his desk sat a data crystal containing his complete report, 200 pages of analysis, 300 hours of video, medical scans, combat logs, everything he had documented about human warfare. But the report felt incomplete. The numbers and data did not capture the truth. How could he explain what he had witnessed? How could he make others understand? Velthar picked up his writing stylus and began to add a final section to his report. Conclusion: Why humans are feared in combat. He wrote for hours. The words came slowly at first, then faster as he found the right way to express what he had learned. I was assigned to observe human soldiers in battle. I was told to document their tactics and capabilities. I have completed this task. But I have learned something far more important than tactics. I have learned why every species that fights alongside humans speaks of them with fear. Humans are not the strongest species. The Kethrani are stronger. Humans are not the fastest. The Silmari are faster. Humans are not the most intelligent. The Vrelnari score higher on strategic testing. But humans have something that no other species possesses in the same measure. They have the ability to decide that something must be done and then refuse to stop until it is done. This is not stubbornness. Stubbornness is refusing to change. Humans change constantly. They adapt faster than any species I have observed. They solve problems in real time. They improvise solutions from materials at hand. This is not fearlessness. Humans feel fear. I have seen them afraid. I have seen them cry and shake and doubt themselves. This is something else, something deeper. During my observation, I witnessed the following. Human soldiers advanced through pain weapons that completely disabled every other coalition species. They were suffering. I could see it in every movement. But they continued because their mission required it. Human soldiers operated for days without sleep, using chemical stimulants that were damaging their bodies. They knew the cost. They paid it anyway because their objectives had not been met. Human soldiers continued fighting with injuries that would have forced other species to withdraw. They treated wounds as inconveniences rather than stopping conditions. When the Zalvith deployed a bioweapon designed to shut down their combat abilities, human bodies responded by flooding themselves with chemicals at near-lethal levels. They fought harder, not because they wanted to, but because their biology gave them no choice. They have evolved to respond to extreme stress with extreme action. But the most important thing I witnessed was this. After the battle, when the humans were broken and exhausted and hurting, they helped their enemies. They treated wounded Zalvith. They showed compassion to the very creatures who had been trying to kill them. This is the truth about humans that makes them terrifying. They can become monsters when they need to fight, but they choose to remain people when the fighting stops. I spoke with several human soldiers to understand this better. Here is what I learned. Commander Kwan told me that humans fight not to win, but because they have decided to fight. The outcome matters less than the commitment. This means they cannot be discouraged by losses or setbacks. They simply continue. Lieutenant Haywan explained that humans view their bodies as tools to be used. They will damage these tools if necessary to complete their mission. This is not recklessness. It is calculation. They know the cost and pay it willingly. Sergeant Dong Hyun said that humans fight harder when protecting others than when protecting themselves. This seems illogical, but I have seen it proven true. Human soldiers will take risks for their companions that they would never take for personal gain. Corporal Nari showed me that humans can hold contradictory truths simultaneously. They can see someone as an enemy during combat and as a patient needing help after combat. They do not struggle with this contradiction. It is natural to them. Private Young Soo, the youngest of the soldiers, taught me something important. He was afraid through the entire operation. He admitted this freely, but he fought anyway. Humans do not require the absence of fear. They simply require the presence of purpose. I must now address the question that Coalition Command asked me to answer. Are humans dangerous? Yes. Humans are extremely dangerous, but not in the way I expected. Humans are dangerous because they form bonds. They attach to other beings with an intensity that defies logic. Once they decide you are theirs, they will sacrifice themselves to protect you. This applies to their own species and to others. I witnessed human soldiers risk their lives to save Vrelnari warriors they had known for only days. Humans are dangerous because they do not fight like other species. Most species fight to survive, to acquire resources, to defend territory. These are rational reasons with clear endpoints. Humans fight for ideas, for concepts, for people they love. These reasons have no clear limits. A human who is fighting for an idea will not stop when injured or tired or outnumbered. They will only stop when they believe the idea is safe. Humans are dangerous because they cannot be reliably predicted. Every model I created for human behavior was wrong. They do not act logically. They act according to principles I do not fully understand. They make decisions that seem suicidal and somehow survive. They take impossible risks and succeed. Most dangerously, humans are contagious. I watched soldiers from other species begin to act more like humans after fighting alongside them. The humans' refusal to give up somehow spread. Their willingness to help others became normalized. Their standards became the expected standard. By the end of the operation, I saw Vrelnari warriors advancing into danger they would normally avoid. I saw Ketharani soldiers sharing supplies in ways their culture normally forbids. The humans changed everyone around them simply by being themselves. This is perhaps their most dangerous quality. They do not conquer by force. They conquer by inspiration. Now I must provide my recommendations to Coalition Command. Recommendation 1. Never make humanity an enemy. I have seen what humans can do when fighting for their allies. I cannot imagine what they would do when fighting for their survival. The human homeworld, Earth, nearly destroyed them multiple times through ice ages, plagues, predators, and natural disasters. They survived everything. They learned to treat extinction-level events as problems to solve. A species that survived their own planet will not be defeated by another species. They will adapt. They will endure. They will find a way to win, no matter the cost. The cost to defeat them, if defeat is even possible, would destroy the victor in the process. This is not a war anyone should want. Recommendation 2. Protect humanity's core values. Humans are dangerous, but they are not evil. They value life, including enemy life. They value fairness. They value loyalty. They value compassion. These values are what make them safe as allies. A human soldier will fight to protect you, but will not massacre civilians. They have lines they will not cross, even when crossing those lines would be tactically advantageous. As long as humanity maintains these values, they are the best allies the Coalition could have. But if something ever caused humans to abandon their compassion, to stop caring about right and wrong, to decide that only victory mattered, I do not want to imagine that scenario. Recommendation 3. Recognize human sacrifice. Humans pay a terrible price for the way they fight. They damage their bodies. They carry mental scars. They lose friends and mourn deeply. After the battle on Krev 9, I attended a memorial service for the 2 human soldiers who died. Commander Kwan invited me personally. I watched the surviving humans cry. I watched them comfort each other. I watched them promise to remember the fallen. Their grief was powerful and real. This is important. Humans are not machines. They are not mindless fighters. They feel everything. They just choose to act despite their feelings. They deserve recognition for this. They deserve support. They deserve allies who understand the cost they pay. Final observation. On my last day with the human forces, I spoke with Private Youngsu. His wounds were healing. He would recover fully. I asked him if he would fight again, knowing what he now knew about the cost. He thought for a long moment. Then he said, "Yes, because next time my experience might save someone else. That matters more than my fear." This is what humans are. They are afraid. They are fragile. They are mortal. But they choose to fight anyway, not for themselves, but for others. This is why they are feared, because there is no defense against an enemy who cares more about protecting others than protecting themselves. There is no strategy to defeat an opponent who treats death as an acceptable outcome if it serves their purpose. Humans are feared because they love, because they commit, because they refuse to abandon what they care about. I am honored to call them allies. I pity anyone who makes them enemies. This report is submitted with respect and gratitude. Observer Velthar, Vrelnari Empire, assigned to human combat documentation. Velthar finished writing. He saved the report and prepared to submit it to Coalition Command. But first he had one more task. He composed a message to Commander Quan. "Commander, I have completed my report. I wanted to thank you personally for allowing me to observe your forces. I learned more than I expected. I also wanted to inform you that I have recommended you and your soldiers for the Coalition Medal of Honor. What you accomplished on Krev 9 deserves recognition. Additionally, I have a personal request. The Vrelnari Empire is forming a new joint task force. We would be honored if you would serve as advisor. We want to learn from humans, not just your tactics, but your approach, your way of caring for each other and for allies. If you accept, I look forward to working with you again. With respect, Velthar." He sent the message and sat back in his chair. Through his window, he could see human ships docked at the station. Humans who were preparing for their next mission. Humans who would fight and sacrifice and protect others, just like always. Velthar had spent his entire career studying warfare. He thought he understood combat. Humans taught him that he understood nothing. Combat was not about weapons or tactics or strength. Combat was about why you fought, about who you fought for, about what you were willing to sacrifice. Humans understood this instinctively. It was part of their nature. They had evolved on a planet that tried to kill them, so they learned to fight back. They had survived by working together, so they learned to value each other. They had faced extinction and refused to accept it, so they learned that determination mattered more than strength. This was humanity's secret. This was why they were feared, not because they were strong, but because they cared. And they would break themselves protecting what they cared about. Velthar's data crystal containing his report sat on his desk, ready to be submitted. It contained the truth about human warriors, a truth that would change how every species in the galaxy viewed humanity. They were not conquerors. They were not monsters. They were protectors. Fierce, relentless, terrifying protectors who would pay any price to keep their promises. The galaxy was safer with humans as allies, and infinitely more dangerous for anyone who made them enemies. Velthar submitted his report. The truth about humans was now official record.